This is one of those bands that some people may suggest is outside of my wheelhouse, but Billy Talent with Afraid of Heights, and those people, by the way, would be wrong, all things considered. I've listened to these guys for quite a while. The first track I heard from them was Living in the Shadows during the early portion of the 2000s off of their first album, their debut as Billy Talent. They had a album previous to that under the name Pez, which, great name, guys. But I've seen this band sort of grow up, you know, right before my eyes, which is really neat. And they have influences from alternative rock. They have just standard rock. They have a lot of punk influence. Some would say pop punk, post-hardcore, or even that E word that we don't talk about very often on this channel. I kind of disagree with some of those latter assumptions. Post-hardcore definitely has a bit of a hint of a register. And if people are wondering why I can get into this band but not their favorite band, why can't you get into my favorite band, Coverkillernation? Well, it's because these guys are Canadian. Sometimes you have to be Canadian to do things freaking right, unless your name's Justin Bieber. But let's talk about Afraid of Heights. Let's talk about, firstly, that there is a brand new drummer on this album, an interim drummer, considering Billy Talent's main man experienced a flare-up of his MS, so he had to sit this one out and focus on his health. So they were able to grab the drummer from Alexis on Fire to fill in, which is very, very cool. So, wow, Big Red Gun starts this one off going into Afraid of Heights. Now, remember Afraid of Heights, we're going to be talking about it later. I dig the fact that Afraid of Heights, this title track, has that real, like, it has that sort of, like, radio sex appeal a little bit to it. Whenever you listen to this, you just immediately see or hear this song just being played to death. And it's not something that has happened in America, which is a real shame considering they would have a fairly decent home, I believe at least. But then again, I'm a bit biased since I like them. I'd like to see them have a little bit more United States exposure. They have the talent and they really have the chops, and you know, it presents a little bit of a different view, and that's kind of what it's all about. And I dig the fact that Big Red Gun kind of captures a little bit of their energetic side. This is a band that presents themselves in this kind of format, is that they have a lot of high energy, they have a lot of motion, you know, there's a lot of moving parts going on here, but then they also have mid-tempo and, you know, slower range material that certainly showcases a little bit more soul, a little bit more exploration, and just overall, this is a band that has matured throughout these 5 albums, because their first disc had all of these different things, but they were very schizophrenically placed. It was one where the album was very disjointed, but the songwriting on it was so damn solid that you almost didn't care. And now, with Afraid of Heights, 4 albums later, they seem to have really honed all of that. You know, they have trained with their sensei, and now they are a master. Louder Than the DJ, which is the 4th track off of this album, I dig this for its introductory riff. It's one that seems like it's right out of the Joan Jett and the Blackhearts or the Cheap Trick playbook, and it's a playbook I've learned a lot about in the past week and a half, considering I just saw them live. They were touring together with Heart, which ruled. It was a freaking awesome show. But this is a riff. It's not something that's meant to really stick around. It's basically introducing the whole idea. Louder Than the DJ is a pretty neat track. They always have a couple that are like this that just seem like it screams, not so much radio attention, but it just screams like it's sort of a quirky track. I dig that. But then there's nothing quirkier than Ghost Ship of Cannibal Rats, which is the track that follows it up, which is actually... If this is based off of the actual true story, then man, oh man, I mean, get your Google fingers ready, because this one's pretty interesting. It's all about a vessel that was abandoned, that was filled with rats, and since there was no more food left to eat on the ship, they turned cannibal holocaust on one another and opted to start eating one another. If you find the CNN article, I may post it in the description box. If it's not down there, it's easy to Google. There's a little bit of comedy within that article, which is kind of good as well. I mean, you just have to have appreciation for this. And the song is excellent. The song is really, really cool. You wouldn't think you'd be able to fit in Ghost Ship of Cannibal Rats into lyricism, especially with the quickness and the pace that Billy Talent, you know, traditionally employs, which they do also on this cut. But man, they found a way, and it works. It works very well. Now, going down to Rabbit Down the Hole, quite literally, which follows up Ghost Ship of Cannibal Rats. This is a 6-minute track, one of the longest songs. In fact, it might be the longest song that Billy Talent has ever done, and it's one that is really dictated by its pacing. Every single time we talk about a long song, you probably notice I talk about pacing and atmosphere a good bit. The way in which the composition really grows and morphs throughout that time. How is it, you know, there's that time filled very well, and this one is certainly utilized very properly. The one thing I will say about this song is, even though it is the 6-minute sort of centerpiece cut, because it's right near the middle of the album, it's one that doesn't have that sort of same register of remembrance that I really experienced with some of the other songs on this disc, but it's still one that really serves as an important sort of, division point for this album. It's one that definitely divides side A from side B, and it ends that on a really strong note, if we were talking about a traditional cassette format, of course. Going into Time Bomb Ticking Away, going into Leave Them All Behind. Leave Them All Behind reminds me of, some of the cuts up that you got off of, like, maybe 2 or even 1. Just some of these songs that have a little bit more of that, reality that's laced into the lyricism. Some of that really good advice that sometimes you get from songs and bands of this variety, almost like the singer is directly speaking to you and trying to tell you, hey, everything's going to be cool. And I love the fact that Leave Them All Behind is able to do that within that same scope of energy that Billy Talent always possesses. You still have that strong guitar line, and the drumming, I really have to say, for a session stand-in, really, really good choice, because the drumming is very thick, it's very nice, and it's on point. Now, the remainder of this album is pretty much standard for the Billy Talent playbook, and that's a little disappointing, but they have such great energy about them, which is a word that I keep repeating because it's just the truth, that you almost don't mind it all of that much. Those that have perhaps been assaulted with this band to death on the radio and stuff, I'm looking at you Canadians, how you doing, eh? I can understand why maybe this is just a little, more of the same, but I kind of dig just what they bring to the table. When you hear about the bands that you do hear, and you hear about what energy is all about, it's nice to hear something that doesn't have that sort of whiny overtone to it. This is instead one that just seems to use that sort of punkish energy to its real advantage, as opposed to it just being a, sort of snapshot of the gallop that you get with the musical material itself. But what I really dig about this album is the very final cut on this, which is Afraid of Heights. You might say to yourself, well, Coverkillernation, that was track 2. You might want to check those glasses of yours. Now, this is a reprise, and this is one that takes a little bit more of an electronic approach. It's almost like Billy Talent crossed over a little bit with, like, The Cure or even some Billy Idol as far as the musical construction is concerned, and then the vocals on this. Wow! Okay, the vocal performance on this is really what sold me. The music alone really drives this sort of captivating point home, and this is a track that I feel really should be a crossover potential. It's one that really could even leak its way on the traditional pop radio, because it's a strong enough track with, great lyrics, and then you have this, unique composition to it. It has that element. It screams that it factor whenever I listen to this, and I was really surprised because I never thought I would say that about this band, but it's definitely true. I just really dig, I like this more than I like the original, and the original's pretty damn solid as well, so that should say something. I just love the way that this is handled, and I love the fact that they went a little bit outside their own wheelhouse and tried something a little bit different and opted to take a chance, and it's a chance that I feel should pay off. Whether or not it does is, more to be seen, I suppose, or, we're not going to know that right now, 2 days after the release. So what do we say about this album? I mean, how do we rank this? I will always be a sucker, and I mean a true sucker, for their second album and their first. Really, if I were to rank them, it would probably go 2, 1, 3, their last album, and, well, we need to know where this one is placed. I think that this is one that I could get into a little bit more than 3, so I think it's probably 3rd place on that list. It's not to say that their last album was anything all of that bad. In fact, it was pretty damn solid. You have to remember that for all 5 of these discs, if you're on the bottom of the list, it still means that you are in a very, very acceptable, in fact, very good margin. This is an album I'd probably give like an 81 out of 100 to. I think it's a solid endeavor, a great piece of work. I do kind of miss a little bit of that schizophrenia that you got from the first 2 albums, especially the first one from this group, because I think that really worked in their favor. But it's also very nice to see how this band has grown. What did you guys think about Afraid of Heights by Billy Talent? Let me know in the comments below. My name is coverkillernation, and yeah, there's a lot of jokes in there about how Canada rules. Oh, Canada, I won't sing that anymore. This is why I do this and not the singing thing. Yeah, that looked like I was. Never mind. See ya.